All right, let's get ahead of the game. Let's beat the waiver wire for fantasy week 12. Oh, week 12. Once we get to Thanksgiving, it starts to get like, whoa, this season's almost over. This is nuts. We got to win. You got to beat that waiver wire. You don't want to lose out on those good players. We got Denver, Chargers, Dolphins, Washington on a bye next week. Dave Richard, who's the headliner for the Beat the Waiver Wire segment?
The headliner is Luther Burden III, and we've talked about him this week on multiple shows. 77% available. Has Minnesota this week, Pittsburgh next week. Season high 49% route run rate last week. And we know this, DJ Moore, limited in practice on Thursday. He's probably going to play. Olamide Zaccheaus, 2 drops last week officially. I wonder if they phase him out and they give this rookie a try. Ben Johnson openly said, quote, there's a strong argument that we should get the ball to him more. Seems like a good stash candidate to me. Put him on your bench. Let's see what happens this week. And maybe against Pittsburgh, we have this high-flying rookie end up in our lineups as a flex.
All right, that would be great. Yeah, Luther Burden. All right, anything else? And how about the quarterbacks? As we do have Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Tua, and Mariota on bye.
And there's some tough matchups in week 12. Joe Flacco's got the Patriots. Caleb Williams has the Steelers. Daniel Jones has the Chiefs. And Adam, if Dak and Baker have bad games this week, you might not be excited to start them next week in tough matchups. So the first thing you should do, double check for Brock Purdy, double check for Aaron Rodgers. They're rostered in over 70% of leagues. So they might not be out there in your leagues, but they might be interesting plays with their matchups. Purdy against Carolina, Rodgers at Chicago. The big get is still Jacoby Brissett against Jacksonville at home, 61% available. Jaguars have allowed at least 30 fantasy points to quarterbacks in 3 straight games, including Davis Mills. They've got Justin Herbert this week. That could be another 30 burger. And Marvin Harrison Jr. could be back. We're not starting Jacoby Brissett this week, not because of the matchup, more so because he doesn't have MHJ. So if Marvin Harrison Jr. is back, Jacoby Brissett is a go as a fantasy option in week number 12. You can also look at Trevor Lawrence in that same game. And then the desperation plays are Jameis. That's if Dart is still out by then. Michael Penix, Tyler Shuck, Falcons, Saints play each other next week. And then just a desperation quarterback to add in 2 QB leagues. Jamie's talked about him. Shadur Sanders, just in case the Browns make the switch from Dylan Gabriel and they give their other rookie quarterback a try.
All right. Any running backs, LOL?
Yeah, LOL is right because there's nothing really there that's good, and there are some tough matchups for Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, Aaron Jones. You might have to replace Rashad White by this time next week. Titans running backs have probably already been replaced on your team already. Do a double check for Tyler Algier. Do a quasi double check for Amari DiMercato. He's out there in about a third of CBS leagues. And then the best of what's left, it starts with Sean Tucker. Zonovan Knight is on the list there out there in at least 40% of CBS leagues. But things happen fast in the NFL. If Bucky Irving's back, Sean Tucker's not going to play. If Trey Benson's back, Zonovan Knight's not going to play. Zonovan Knight isn't even 100% either. So it's kind of a mess at running back. You can't really go to the waiver wire and find somebody you can just immediately plug into lineups. But, Adam, I do have a stash.
Okay.
Devin Neal. This is more of deeper leagues just because he's a rookie running back coming out of a bye. 88% available for the Saints. Do they turn the page from Alvin Kamara, let their rookie get some more run? He's got Atlanta next week, so not necessarily the easiest of matchups, although Jonathan Taylor would tell you that it's one of the easiest of matchups. But Devin Neal is someone that you could at least speculate on. I would rather speculate on Luther Burden, for example, and there's some other tight ends that we'll talk about that I'd rather speculate on. But for those that are running back hungry, Devin Neal is an option.
And I know he's got a bye next week, but if Chris Rodriguez is a starting running back, the main running back, he's only 13% rostered. Could do worse. I've seen people pick him up in my leagues.
We will probably talk about him a week from now.
Yeah. All right. We should talk about wide receivers and tight ends after this break on FFT Express. All right. We're back. Welcome back, everybody. I just made a very strange face. I was like, okay.
All right. Faces you make.
Luther Burden, you mentioned. Any other ones that you're really itching to stash?
He's the biggest stash that I would itch, but I would check for Christian Watson, who's 35% available and might end up being the number 1 wide receiver for the Packers. That wasn't necessarily a good thing on Monday, but he had his downfield opportunities. He looks pretty good. He's running fast. He does things that the Packers need on offense, certainly things that Matthew Golden wasn't able to give this year. So I would double check for him. I would put him on the stash list too. Would I take him over Luther Burden? I think I might, just because DJ Moore could end up playing. If DJ Moore ends up playing, then what could realistically happen for Burden is that he might play 50% of the snaps. So you can move Watson ahead, but he's already rostered in 2/3 of CBS leagues. A receiver rather that you might be able to start is Parker Washington, still 40% available. You just have to make sure that he's available. He's at Arizona in week 12. You might be able to use Washington in week 11. Some other stash wide receivers, and Burden is way ahead of these guys, but names to know. Jaden Higgins with the Texans, Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin with the Steelers. They've got Chicago in week 12. Those are interesting guys. Wilson, especially 11.5 or more PPR points in 2 of his past 3 games. I wish he played a little more, and maybe he will, because Calvin Austin hasn't had more than 10.6 PPR points in 4 straight games. He's been playing ahead of Wilson. Maybe a change comes here. Maybe it happens this week for the Steelers against the Bengals, and that would benefit Roman Wilson quite a bit. Some IR stashes at wide receiver: Brandon Ayuk, Jaden Reed, Jalen McMillan. Yeah, if you've got the IR spots available, go ahead and plug them in there. McMillan's available in 92% of leagues, by the way.
And Chris Godwin's available in 33% of leagues, for what that's worth. He could be back next week. He's practicing right now, and I don't think he's going to play in week 10, 11, but he could play in week 12. So could do worse. Tight ends.
Tough matchups for Dalton Schultz next week. Jake Ferguson, Juwan Johnson. That's on top of not having Oronde Gadsden and Zach Ertz. Check for Harold Fannin. Still out there in 30% of CBS leagues. People have been slow to gravitate toward him. How about this tight end? We've talked about him every week on the waiver beat, the Beat the Waiver show. I was about to say the waiver beat show. That sounded funny.
The waiver, beat.
Brenton Strange, 84% available. The Jaguars team reporter expects him to play in week 11.
Oh,
This is somebody who could pencil in for 10 PPR points. We know that there's all kinds of trouble with the receiving core in Jacksonville. This guy's going to be pretty steady for Trevor Lawrence and a good 3rd down option. Again, 84% available. Takes on Arizona in week 12. They've allowed at least 14 half PPR points to a tight end in 3 of their past 4 games. Almost 9 half PPR points to a tight end in 6 of 9 games. Other tight ends that are interesting: Pat Freiermuth against Cincinnati this week. That's usually a good thing for tight ends. He's 85% available. And then he's got Chicago the week after that. They've allowed a bunch of numbers to tight ends as well. Theo Johnson could be on the list for however long that Darius Slayton is out. And then another stash name, it's the same stash name as last week: Luke Musgrave, 78% available. And an IR stash behind Brenton Strange, because I don't know how long Strange is going to be on the IR for. Darren Waller, still on IR. Maybe he comes off of IR. Maybe he gives the Dolphins a little something. He's available in 71% of CBS leagues.
Guess we just picked up Brenton Strange in a league.
Hopefully it's not a league that I'm in. Otherwise, I'm going to be mad at you.
It's not. It's weird that nobody really wanted to put him. Nobody really wanted him. So he's not IR eligible. But when he comes off IR, if he does this weekend, I will drop David Njoku for Brenton Strange. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to start. I'm not going to start Strange this week. He's going to be my 2nd tight end. All right. DSTs.
It's a little gross for DSTs, and obviously you've got to replace Denver and the Chargers. The Texans next week have Buffalo. The Patriots have the Bengals. The Rams have the Bucs. So 3 DSTs that we love might not be ranked as high as they normally are. There's a slew of DSTs just to check for. They're already rostered north of 65% of leagues: the Falcons, the Eagles, the Bills, the Browns. Here's 2 that you could use in week 11 and week 12, one more so than the other. The Chiefs going up against Denver, and then Indianapolis. It's not the easiest matchup for them either week, but they're a good defense. The Vikings are 53% available. They've got Chicago and Green Bay. I would look for a spirited effort from the Cowboys defense, and especially their first game with Quinnen Williams this week against the Raiders. 56% available. I would only use them this week. Don't want to use them next week. So if you're desperate for a DST in week 11, the Cowboys would be an option. Other desperation DSTs: the Niners against Carolina. They're out there in 2/3 of leagues. The Cardinals against the Jaguars. They've given up a lot of points to DSTs lately. And the Raiders, I know they stink, but they're taking on the Browns. That game's going to stink. And the Browns have allowed at least 10 fantasy points to a DST 6 times in 9 games this year.
All right. That's Dave Richard. Beat it on the waiver beat here on Fantasy Football Today Express. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.